how would you tell people that? You personally, how would you decide?
Well, interesting question. I don't know. I'd have to do some research on this.
Alright, hello everybody. Welcome to Dapper Reacts 23. I just realized that I did not turn off my fan. I have a fan that's basically sucking air out of my computer because it likes to get hot sometimes, especially since I live in a hot place. But I am here, as typical, with Vishanti, who unfortunately couldn't be on camera today. Vishanti, why don't you say hi to everybody?
Hi to everybody.
There you go. Now, I have informed Vishanti that because she does owe everyone feeders, that means that next time, just to just have feeders on, right? So, you know, can't give her too many breaks on being on camera when she owes the feeders.
It's true.
Yeah.
And also, my ear cuffs come in a pair, one for each ear, so I can wear double feeders next
There
time.
you go. Double feeders. Okay. So, we are here with a new video series, so I want to give a little bit of background on this.
Wait, you didn't load up my meme, did you?
No. No, was I?
Despite me asking you... That's fine.
Okay, hold on. I will... give me a second.
I was gonna say, I thought this is why you were telling people about me not being on camera, because you're gonna be like, here's the explanation why.
Okay. I will make sure I load it up while we're talking. Okay?
Okay.
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 Alright, so... sorry about that. I just lost track of where we were. Oh, right, so what this video is. Okay, so some of you guys might know about Genesis Apologetics. And they are, in my opinion, one of the dumbest of the creationist organizations. And they're also not really one of the big three, right? So the big three are like AIG,
ICR,
AIG, and CMI. And there we go.
Yeah.
I have loaded up the meme. So
this is why I'm not on camera today.
Yes. So there you go. Oh, for those of my viewers who are visually impaired, which I know I do have a few, we have a meme where the top panel says, "The myth of consensual sex." On the left, we have a bunch of trees saying, I consent, and then on the right, we have a human nasal sinus diagram that says, I don't. Bottom, it says, "Isn't there somebody you forgot to ask?" And yes, I have switched out the projector for a fwing, which is basically just my avatar's arm with feathers attached, because that's literally what the fwing that
Kind of
CMI
looks
had
like
asked for.
looks like the state of Louisiana.
A little bit, yeah. Anyway, right. So answers Genesis Apologetics. So they did this conference at a church, and it was like a big two-day thing. They released two 2+ hour videos, and I'm gonna go through them. Now, we're not gonna get through a 2-hour video today. We're probably not even gonna come close. They also did cut out the first half hour or so, because it was all just, why does the Bible say the thing the Bible says? I don't really care about in terms of this channel. Like, don't get me wrong. As I'm sure Vishanti can attest, I do read things from the Bible, and I'm interested in the development of the text and, you know, things like that. But that's not why I'm here on this show. So.
Correct.
We're skipping past that. We're also skipping past Dan Biddle's advertisements for his stuff. If you want to see what Dan Biddle has to sell you, I mean, go check out his webpage. I mean, whatever.
I'm gonna choke on my Pop-Tart. Fred Turpin says, "That's why Jacket lit over flowers. See how they like it."
Careful, that might get you arrested in some places. Okay, so, but yeah, we're gonna go into this. Now, the interesting thing about this, most interesting, is that ICR joined in on Genesis Apologetics conference, and not the other way around. And to me, this indicates just how far out of favor ICR is falling because of their nonsense about continuous environmental tracking. They're lowering themselves into the second tier of creationist organizations, and I think soon there will not be a big 3. There will be a big 2, and then there will be a larger second tier. So that's what I think.
Can we just prune them all? That'd be great.
Look, I honestly think that it is too well ingrained for it to be likely to go away within the next couple generations.
Ugh.
Yeah, I think we're gonna have to wait until like the kids who are now kids, when they have their grandchildren, then it might be to the point where young Earth creationism is so fringe that most people haven't even heard of it. I also don't think it's ever going to completely go away. Because, I mean, if you think about it, there's still Shakers out there, right? Like, the Shakers were like a religious, cultish movement during like the Great Awakening in the 1800s. There's still a few out there, and one of their big distinctive things were that no one was ever allowed to have sex for any reasons. No reproduction, only conversions. There's still like 2 of them left. Like, things persist.
Two there are.
Right? No more, no less.
No more, no less.
So yeah, I think things are just going to stick around. I mean, what was it? I found out recently Turkey still has like some Zevatai followers from like the failed attempt at proclaiming a guy to be the Jewish Messiah from like, what was it, the 1500s or something? Yeah,
Shabtai false Messiah, one of many.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like he still has some followers in Turkey. There's like a couple dozen or something. So like, beliefs persist in small pockets. So I don't think creationism is going to go away in the foreseeable future, even in hundreds of years. But anyway,
ugly German truce just legitimately dunked on me and said a cartoon avatar without feeders. Talk about boo.
That's why the thumbnail is what it is. Actually, that's not true. I didn't know that was happening yesterday.
Neither did I until I woke up this morning.
Yeah. Too Young to Feel This Old just gifted 5 Dapper Dinosaur memberships. Thank you very much. They went to Tesla Ranger, Jason Hyatt, Alien Bird, Chaz Sirius, and Rhea Jays. So congratulations to you people. And do connect your Discord to the YouTube account that you're currently using to get that membership. And it will add you to the Discord server. Anyway, I think we've had enough preamble. You think we're ready?
Yep.
All right, here we go.
No.
Well, yeah, no, we're not. But Dan Biddle, here he is.
So when it comes to Genesis, again, we believe that if you want to have good productive fruit, it all starts with your root system.
Those are some deep roots. I hope there's no disease associated with that.
Yep.
Phenomenon that we're seeing today with students is that when they try to grow their roots down into Scripture, they're running into rocks. Things like, what about science versus the Bible? Or what about Charles Darwin? What about millions of years in deep time? What about ape to human evolution? And for a lot of those students, rather than their root systems, their tentacles...
Yeah. One of the things that this meme just screams to me is, I know my religion is wrong, and I want to deny reality in order to keep pretending that it isn't.
I mean, it's very, like, almost self-aware, like, it's science versus the Bible, so it's science versus not science.
Right.
And then, obviously, Charles Darwin, the Pope of Evolution, Pope of Science, you know.
I'm sure you genuflected off camera.
I did, actually.
Good.
Going down deep, they're getting stunted. They're hitting into these rocks, these obstacles to faith, and when their roots are being interrupted...
Mm-hmm.
Do trees grow through rocks?
Actually, many cases, yes. You can actually find rocks that have been split apart by tree roots. Tree roots
tree roots grow around the rocks?
And in many other cases, yes. Actually, they can do both of those things.
So in neither of those situations are they drawing nutrients from the rock?
Correct. They generally draw them from the surrounding soil. Yep. In fact, I've actually seen trees grow on rocks and send roots into soil surrounding the rock.
Mm-hmm.
This is actually a really bad analogy. Trees are way more hardy than they're being portrayed here. So, guys, when you make your little 3D tree, cap off the top and bottom of your root structures. Just gonna put that out there. Just do that. Also, maybe make sure that this is nitpicky and like technical, but when you're projecting leaves from the branches on your tree, you actually want to make sure that the origin and alignment of the leaf object that you're instancing actually has its origin connected to where like the leaf starts, so the leaves don't float, right? So you want to
free-floating leaves.
Yeah, you want to move that origin for the tree object so it's right where the stem of the leaf is. So that way when it projects from the branch, the leaf actually comes out of the branch instead of floating nearby. I recognize that this is, a little inside baseball, but like, This is sort of 3D tree 101. Like, have you ever made a 3D tree before? And I have.
Have you ever even seen a tree?
Right. So.
Yeah, there's some leaves. I mean, some of them are connected.
Some of them, yeah. Actually, I'll bet if you zoomed in, you would find that none of them are actually connected. Some of them are just in places where it's so dense you can't tell. Because it looks like none of the origins for the leaves are where they ought to be.
Their fruit sometimes never grows. So we're here to try to blow open those channels and get your root system tied so that your fruit system can grow.
Your deep root system.
Yes.
All believe that starts with the book of Genesis. It's very, very historical.
No!
I mean, it starts out mythological and then goes legendary. At no point is it historic.
Oh my goodness. You know what? I've taken a lot of psychic damage over the last few days. I think I need to roll for that.
Let me know what you roll.
If you look at what Jesus taught about the book of Genesis...
You only rolled a 3?
Yep.
Yeah, that's bad. You just took full psychic damage.
Whoops.
Yeah, that's not a good day.
Every time Jesus threw back and referenced the Old Testament, which was 42 different times, including the book of Genesis several times.
Did you think he's counting every time in each gospel separately, even though
probably
in the synoptic gospels those are going to be the same time over and over again? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, probably. So in case anyone here doesn't know, there's 3 gospels that are called the synoptic gospels because they generally tell the same story in very similar ways. The same stories, sorry. Sometimes they're in different orders. But yeah, the same stories are usually in there, and there's often like large sections where the text is just identical. And usually people consider places where the text is identical between these gospels, which is Matthew, Mark, and Luke, to basically just be a single source. Because with identical text and extremely similar stories, they're probably either dependent on each other or dependent on an independent or another fourth source. One of the more common ideas is Mark in priority because Mark is the shortest, and it tends not to have any sections that are missing from, or any significant sections that aren't in Matthew or Luke, whereas Matthew and Luke each have their own unique sections, but also draw heavily from Mark. So, like, Mark in priority is one of the ideas. But there's also the idea of, like, a separate source, probably that just had a bunch of sayings that all 3 of them are drawing on. Whatever, it doesn't really matter. The idea is, John, though, is probably a separate source, because it has very little resemblance other than the vague outline of the story to the other 3 Gospels. And so, if Jesus references, say, Adam and Eve in Mark and Matthew and Luke, in the same way, in the same story, it's probably not 3 different references to Genesis. Also, Marie PCFHS, that's a lot of letters, says, for 50,000 Vietnamese
dong. Mm-hmm.
Hi, how's Dr. Tittlelack doing nowadays? Please send him my greetings if you guys meet him. I kind of hope I don't meet Andrew Snelling, because I don't know how I would react.
Tittlelack?
Yes, he called Tiktaalik Tittlelack several times in one of his speeches. It was... it's, yeah. It was very annoying. Anyway, here we go. We'll continue on with the deep roots of Genesis.
100% of the time, Jesus regarded the Old Testament as a real, literal, historical narrative. Never did he refer to it in a mythical type of sense.
I'm going to need some corroborating evidence that he considered it a literal text, because...
Yeah, that's the thing, is when you refer to legendary or mythical stories, you don't usually start out by, like, identifying them as such, whether or not you believe it, right? Like, if I ask people, like, oh, hey, who was the king of, the ancient king from, had a golden touch, everything he touched turned to gold. Someone says it was King Midas. The fact that I'm not couching it in who's the legendary king who totally didn't exist, like, I don't need to say that. Right? People don't normally talk that way. So if Jesus says, well, when God made Adam and Eve, I don't think that on its own indicates that he had to believe it. Now, I don't personally care whether or not Jesus believed these things for the purposes of this discussion. I just don't think it's necessary to take that from the text. I don't know, what do you think?
No, and also, I am not actually a part of the Power Rangers gaming group. Ugly German Truths.
You could be.
I could be, but I'm not.
Okay, I'm just saying we do have an open slot.
Okay.
Pass. That's what that okay was.
When it comes to the 6 days of creation, I know those are probably the 6 days that split the world on worldviews. But here's one way I would ask that you consider it. So if we believe in an omnipresent, omnipowerful God,
usually that's called omnipotent, but sure, whatever.
Yeah. I mean, hey, potent is a hard word for him.
I won't make the obvious joke.
would it be capable, would God be capable of creating everything that we see, like the fourth commandment says, the heavens, the earth, the sea, and all that is in them? Is it possible that God could have created in 6 seconds, minutes, hours, days, weeks, months, or years? And
yeah, I mean, if you've got an omnipotent...
a lot of things are possible, but the fact is, if he did it in 6 days, he went out of his way to make it look like it was way older than that.
Yeah. And the other thing is, I don't think anyone is objecting to the Genesis narrative on the grounds that they don't think that an omnipotent being could do it. Like, that's not the grounds. Like, usually the grounds are, one, most people probably don't feel like you've actually established the real reality of your omnipotent being. It doesn't really matter what's possible for them. But even if you grant that, the question is there any reason to think this? That this is actually what happened, right? Because I'm not here saying, oh, if there were an omnipotent being, it definitely couldn't have created the universe and any of these things. Of course it could have. Did it? Is there any evidence either way? And the answer is yes, there is a lot of evidence. And the answer is no. No, if there's an omnipotent being, it did not create the entire universe in 6 days, roughly as we find it now, 6,000 years ago.
I mean, I don't think that they realize that they might actually be giving more credence to the Islamic view of God, who can actively deceive people.
Yeah, actually, the Quran is pretty full of verses about God's going to deceive the unbelievers. Which,
I mean,
yeah.
Maybe he did do it in 6 days, but he made it look super old to test you or whatever.
So it's not Satan testing your faith by bearing the fossils, it's God doing it.
I mean, God straight up says that he'll send you a false prophet to test you, so what's the problem?
It's very inconvenient, because I'm not sure how I'm supposed to tell the difference between the false and the real ones.
Interesting. Well, if you have a direct revelation from God, then maybe then.
Oh, okay. But then wouldn't that make me the prophet?
Well, if you predict something that comes true, we're still not gonna, throw in the towel yet. We have to wait and see if you're telling us to worship other gods first.
Oh.
Because if you do tell us to worship other gods, you're gonna get rocked to sleep, as Kent Hovind puts it.
Not the worst euphemism, I'll give him that.
Yeah.
I think most of us would admit, there's a divine creator up there that's capable of doing everything and breathing creation into existence. He could have chosen any one of those time intervals,
or any others,
to create the world by. And when we look through Scripture, he chose days. In fact, he defined what a day is in Genesis 1 through 11. And did you know that if you look at Genesis chapter 1, verse 11, but if you look at every time God talks about the days, he surrounds the 6 days of creation with 3 things: evening, morning, and then a number.
Not that first day or the second day. Those don't have evenings or mornings. You know why? Because there's no sun.
I mean,
yes?
I don't know how technical we want to get this.
Do it.
Okay. So, there is an evening and morning first day. The text literally says that. Yom Echad. It literally says there's day. So I'm like, okay, you've got days and nights before the sun and moon, so something is up. And that's where the Kabbalists came in and said, this is supernal light. It's like a totally mystical concept.
Okay.
There's a whole entire bunch of treatises written on this, so.
Just be careful with that Zohar, because, it's 1/1d6 sanity damage.
That's true.
Yeah. I checked. It's listed in the Call of Cthulhu's Keeper manual. how you know it's
There,
accurate.
it's also like day and morning, or evening and morning are also in the second day. So it's like, okay,
Just don't
from
make
our
much
modern
sense.
eyes, yeah, from our modern eyes, we would say that's a rotation of the Earth. But they didn't believe the Earth was rotating, so that would have been.
True.
This is weird because it would have been a phenomenon of gradually decreasing light and then a phenomenon of gradually increasing light over the flat plane with a dome on it. So it's like, eh.
Yeah. Actually, it's one of the things I disagree with MC Toon about is that there's no indication of a flat Earth cosmology in the Bible. There absolutely
No, there actually is.
yeah. You don't have to take the Bible as like trying to convince you of that, because I do think it's sort of just a background assumption rather than like the point of the Bible is to convince you of the flat Earth. But like, no, the Bible absolutely assumes that there's a flat Earth. At least in the older parts of it, right?
Yeah.
Eventually, some of the parts were written late enough that has kind of gone away, and I actually disagree with the implication that the story of Jesus' fast in the desert is implying a flat Earth, because the idea at the time was that there was an inhabited world, and that's what Jesus was shown. And you could hypothetically see the inhabited world that was known at the time from a tall enough mountain. Also, even before I ever thought about it, I always thought it was more of like a dramatic place for like visions to occur, rather than just physically seeing with your eyeballs photons coming from all the kingdoms of the earth. That never was the way I took it, just reading it naively.
Yeah, I mean, I always read it as just like, oh, it's like a vision. It's like when you watch a movie.
Yeah. DMing Unofficial for $5 says, God spoke the universe into being. The Bible was written by human beings, which should theists regard as the word of God? I mean, look, I'm not here to tell theists what to do, other than to stop denying science. But, like, it's an interesting question, right? Most people who take the Bible seriously, with whatever canon you want to go for, because few, generally do acknowledge that there are human authors to those books. And so they do think that there's like a human hand in it, and that God has in some way stepped in to make sure that the important message he has makes it into the book. Exactly what the mechanics of that are, I don't know. I don't think anyone's really well defined it.
Yeah. And to respond to what Ugly German Truths ask, or I shouldn't say ask, but you mean to say that the scientifically correct Bible can fail to recognize daylight as sunlight and never got corrected? I mean, technically you can have the phenomenon of light or brightness without stars, but only at the very, 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 very beginning of the universe that we know of.
Yeah. Or also
because
fire.
as soon as it got cold enough for atoms and whatever to start to coalesce, then you actually do need like
you get this dark
proto-stellar bodies. Yeah. So, and I've heard people argue that. Actually, I've heard people argue on they're people who aren't necessarily into mysticism, but it's close enough that I would regard it as mysticism, saying that Genesis was obliquely describing like the Big Bang cosmology in terms of like there was light without stars, and it's like the only way that we know of is right in the initial stages of the Big Bang. Like,
I find that
I don't think that's what it meant.
JS has said that Ben Stanhope made a solid video about flat Earth cosmology in the Bible and early churches. I would be interested in that.
Solid skydome of biblical cosmology in the ancient Near East.
Yeah, remind me. Oh, okay. Let me actually copy that. Paste it. I'm just going to paste it into the Discord chat with Vishanti.
Okay.
Please hold this for me.
Okay.
Let's see. Soulcat also said, but God wrote the beginning of Genesis. Kent Hovind. Yeah, that's an unusual fringe take from Kent Hovind. That is not the typical interpretation from Christians or Muslims or Jews, most of whom do not think that that's the case. Even the ones who think it was Moses, which it also wasn't. Still, like, saying God wrote Genesis 1 is a very, very free. In fact, I don't know if I've ever heard it from anyone but Kent Hovind.
I don't think I have either.
Yeah. All right.
says that for day 1 and day 2 and day 3, and then he steps back on the last day and he says, behold, it is very good. And if you go through scripture, every time the word yom is used with, which is the Hebrew word for day, every time it's used with a number or evening or day, it always means an ordinary earth rotation.
I'm going to skip ahead a little bit. I don't actually care about his exegesis of Genesis 1, unless you don't.
But also, this is just really poor, understanding of the biblical text. Because not every time that yom is used and has a number, it's referring to what he thinks of as ordinal or whatever. Because the text doesn't say day 1, day 2. It's using day the first or day 1, I should say. Day 1, day the second, day the third. It's not giving you what am I trying to say? This is what happens to me when I'm congested and sorely undercaffeinated. He's going to make a broad generalization that I don't feel holds up consistently. So that's all I'm going to say.
Let's get him to that generalization.
Okay.
All right.
Day. So I believe that God chose that interval because he gave us the fourth commandment and said, look, I want you to model your life, your rhythm after this pattern. 6 days of work and 1 day of rest.
Which
6 days.
All Christians except for Jehovah's Witnesses promptly ignored.
And the Seventh-day Adventists.
Oh yeah, right. Sorry, Seventh-day Adventists. I meant to say Seventh-day Adventists, not Jehovah's Witnesses, but
yeah, actually,
again,
I
brain.
think Jehovah's Witnesses, do they do something on Saturday?
They do Sunday.
Okay, but they also have a midweek
I meant to say.
too.
This is exactly why I'm not on camera today, because I am definitely not firing on all mental cylinders today.
It happens. I just had my third cup of coffee, and I'm probably gonna have to go get more caffeine around the break time because
Yep. Same.
Yeah, it was a rough morning. Which also, in order to help with the rough morning, if everyone could hit that would be great. That would really help.
If all the people watching hit then that'll make you a very nice person.
Am I not a nice person right now? What's going on?
Did you not hit on your own video?
I'm not even watching my own video from the watch channel. I'm watching it from the studio. I can't.
Gasp!
Yeah. I physically can't like it from here.
The jury's out, and they're gonna take less than 3 hours.
1 day of rest.
That's a deep cut inside joke from our conversations earlier this week.
Yes. Yes. But no one else is going to get that.
That's why it's an inside joke.
Okay.
In 6 hours and rested on the 7th hour. He didn't. He chose days because he was trying to model a rhythm for our biology to work for 6 days and a day of rest. And those are...
Yes, it's impossible for humans to get any kind of analogy like that.
Or, and, hear me out here, trying to create a national identity that separates you from the regional powers around you would go a lot better if you have it in your origin myth that your God told you to work for 6 days and rest on the 7th day.
Yeah. And also, having a day of rest sounds like a nice idea generally.
It is.
Just kind of relax every once in a while.
It is. A day to just be a potato, don't put on any pants, take lots of naps, eat junk food, just dirtbag out.
Don't even carry things.
Yeah, don't even carry things, don't write anything down.
Mm-mm.
I mean, heck, if you can't remember to turn the lights on the night before, just don't turn them on.
Yeah, there's a sun.
Exactly.
Get your soup in the oven the night before.
Yeah, or start the crock pot, man.
There you go.
Yeah.
Just don't do that in Spain.
If you have worked 7 days in a row or 10 days in a row, you know that you probably need 1 day of rest every 7 days. So that's
Only
one interesting...
Yeah, that's one of those things. It's not like that's the perfect combination, right? There's a fair bit of study going into workplace productivity and things that indicate that actually 4 days a week might actually get more done overall than 5 days and 2 off. And that might actually be a more effective work week. And then, none of the companies like it because all they see is fewer billable hours means less work got done.
Goodbye. But yeah, it's anybody who goes around being like, oh yeah, 10 Commandments, 6 days of creation and 7 days Sabbath, precisely none of them outside of Seventh-day Adventists are actually doing that. You have a 2-day weekend, just like everybody else. So somebody needs to chop, get on that extra day of work that you're not doing.
No, see, it's at least
it's
at least 1 day of work. That's the hidden secret part.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's only in the original Paleo Hebrew.
Right, and it's fine to make other people work for you, but, you don't do any work. Because, if you get out of church on Sunday, you're not going to work because that'd be bad, but it's fine to go to, like, Golden Corral.
Yes, that's correct. You don't have to worry about them. They're not saved.
Yeah.
They're going to hell, but before they do, they're going to cook you some chicken wings.
That's right, and, when you leave them a tip, you just leave them a dollar bill printed tract instead.
Oh, never do that. Look, if you want to leave someone a tract, fine, but also leave a real tip. Because nothing is going to turn people off more to your tract than getting rid of the money they should have been getting. And this is for places where tipping is basically obligatory, like the United States. I recognize that most of the world
America
isn't that stupid, but whatever.
Yeah.
Way of looking at it. And where do we get this idea of a young Earth from? Well, it's real simple. You can just...
The University of our ass.
I actually like Kent Hovind's version of this better, because this just stark black and white is like... It's just a bunch of visual noise. Kent Hovind's is actually like color-coded, and like you can use the color coding to help try to get like a sense of what's going on. This is just...
There's no reason to have all of those lines there. There's just not.
No, I mean, I get that you're trying to include like the different books of the Bible and like important non or extra biblical historical things, like whatever, but like, oh my goodness, this is just a visual nightmare. It's like that green graph that what's it, Kurt Wise used that was just in the video last week, where it's just like from a data visualization standpoint, this is trash.
Yeah. I like what April Van Ryn in the chat says. If resting on the Sabbath is holy, then wouldn't taking 2 Sabbaths make you twice as holy?
Oh, there you go.
Technically, it's not to make the person holy, but that's for another time.
Would it make the week extra holy then?
Oh, yeah!
There you go. The holiest week. The holiest week is just vacation.
Yeah! That's right.
Pattern out all the days and the lifespans that are given of the pre-flood patriarchs. We get about 1,700 years from the time of the creation to the flood, and then we have a group of time from the flood to...
Chris McDaniel says, I remember blue laws.
Oh, yeah.
And I used to live in Massachusetts where there are still blue laws on the books.
Massachusetts has, if I'm not mistaken, to this day still has the most amount of blue laws on its book compared to the other United States.
I believe that is correct. In fact, actually, if I remember correctly, it's still illegal to sell alcohol on Sundays in the vast majority of Massachusetts. At least it was when I was living there. And the only exception was if your liquor store was within a certain distance of the New Hampshire border, you could sell liquor on Sundays because New Hampshire didn't have liquor laws. They also don't have sales tax, so in order to help liquor stores just south of the border have any chance, there was like an extra like exception carved out of the liquor blue laws.
We get a special dispensation for the people up near the border.
Yeah, basically. Although actually,
also,
New Hampshire only has state liquor stores, which is weird, but they're actually pretty nice.
Oh, weird. Jessica says, as a former Seventh-day Adventist, I can say that not only is Vishanti correct here, but they're hyper aware that they're one of the only Christian groups actually doing the Seventh-day thing and constantly bringing up.
Oh yeah, they do. It's a big part of their identity.
Yep. That's why they're called Seventh-day Adventists. It's right there in the name.
It's right in the name, yeah. Because originally there was like a debate over what the name of the group should be called. Some of them were going to go with like, Church of Christ, and other people rightly pointed out that's what everyone calls themselves.
Yeah.
It doesn't tell anyone anything about us. Everyone claims to be the Church of Christ.
And there is actually a denomination called the Church of Christ. So
yeah, well,
they're the ones that don't accept musical instruments in their worship services because that's not in the New Testament.
It's not. It's true. Also, it's also not traditionally in any known like liturgical tradition that goes back more than like the Protestant Reformation. So there's that too. Yeah, you actually don't get instruments in church until basically like the early modern period.
current. So we have, 4,000 years of history before Christ, and we have about 2,000 years of history after Christ. So if you sum up all these genealogies from the book of Genesis and following, that's where we get the idea of the young earth from. So if we interpret these 6 days as real, literal days, we have 6 days of creation where God created everything as perfect. And then we have at some point after that the fall where Adam and Eve brought sin and death and suffering into the world. So that would make sin, death, and suffering and bloodshed and cancer Adam and Eve's fault and not part of God's original design for humans. He knew it was going to happen. But if we take the 6 literal ordinary days, that's where we see that death and suffering comes from.
He's given us fossil thorns because of the curse of Adam in Genesis 2. Awesome.
Incredible. Incredible.
How do we know that the earth is young? Well, because fossil thorns couldn't exist before the curse of Adam. Sure.
As soon as Adam sinned, roses began to sprout thorns, thistles came into existence, so I guess that's progressive creation.
Man, those cacti must have had it rough before the fall.
Rough.
Getting eaten by everything.
But yeah, and it's again, I know this is not something that you would win an argument over, but if technically just Adam, was made from the dust of the earth, or from the earth itself, that pulverized dirt and dust is actually the result of lots and lots of time and some deaths of organic materials, so...
Yeah, that's one of the things, is you don't get soil instantly. In fact, that's actually one of the reasons that we know that the geological column is not the result of a single flood, because it has multiple soil horizons that are fossilized. They're called paleosols. And soil takes a while to build up. Things have to die, they have to decay, there has to be erosion to actually create, the inorganic matrix around which the organic parts of the soil, collect and whatnot. Soil is a whole big thing. It's not just a bunch of pulverized rock. It's a very complex thing, full of living things, dead things.
Lots of organic materials in there.
Oh, yeah. And,
again, did God create the earth with the appearance of age and then create already dead materials from which to fashion Adam?
I mean, it seems like that would be the implication if you want to take this hyper literally. Yeah.
I mean, hell, they're taking the 6 days hyper literally, so why not?
Yeah, I mean, no, I'm saying this should be their interpretation if they thought about it. Of course, the thing is, none of them are consistently literalist. They all have weird little caveats that they carve out simply because if they didn't, they would seem too ridiculous even to their other extremely conservative literalist Christian fellows, right? I remember...
and the vast majority of them do it within the next 4 to 5 chapters, in fact.
Yeah.
Because by the time you get to the flood and it says the windows of heaven, they're like, no, that's obviously a metaphor.
I actually asked a creationist speaker at a church about that specifically. He's like, well, that's a metaphor. I'm like, okay, well, it doesn't say anything about it being a metaphor, so why are we taking the rest of this literally? Because it's a literal history. Oh, okay. Got it. Sure.
Okay, so you're definitely not engaging in special pleading there or anything.
Yeah. Anyway, here we go.
That's where we get thorns and thistles from. So we immediately have a conflict because evolutionists would look at that thorn and say, well, it's 200 million years old and existed millions and millions of years before humans were even here to bring thorns and thistles onto the earth. Because what God...
Interestingly enough, because evidence of thorns exists lower in the geological column than the earliest humans. So what's the only logical conclusion? Thorns predate humans. Not predate.
That's just evolutionism.
It is evolutionism. It's true. I'll genuflect later when my left hand is in a brace.
Rip.
I've been doing a lot of scripting this past week, and so yeah, I got a little bit of a carpal tunnel going on in my left arm.
God, I really hope not. I mean, having had tendinitis, at least, I wouldn't really wish that on anybody, but I would definitely take tendinitis over carpal tunnel.
Well, so this is... I'm wearing this to help prevent any further symptoms from becoming, prominent, right? So, until the symptoms either decrease to the point where I don't really notice them, until then, I'm wearing this whenever I'm using the computer, or I'm also wearing it to sleep, because I like to sleep with my wrists in weird positions, which is probably not good for me.
Also, I will address at least Elusive Man's comment. The Bronze Age started from as early as 4000 BCE to 1200 BCE. Archaeology and history disprove the Torah only if you're trying to take it as literal historical fact, which the vast, and I mean vast, majority of Jews do not.
As well as the vast majority of Christians.
Yeah, not the vast majority of Christians.
Like, you take all the people for whom the Torah or the Pentateuch is part of their scripture, which is a very large portion of people. The huge majority of them do not think that it is necessary to take all of that stuff as literal things that definitely happened.
Nope.
Cursed the earth after Adam and Eve chose to sin. He cursed the earth, vegetation, animals, men, women, and the relationship between the two. Everything under the
Which is
dominion
why it's okay
of Adam
for
and
us
Eve.
Christians to be sexist.
Yes. Also, if you and your wife don't get along, it's Adam's fault, apparently.
Correct.
Fell. So if this is true, well, we have death and suffering that are brought into the world by Adam and Eve's sin, and they're not God's fault. But if we say, well, it's not a literal interpretation, then we would...
Technically.
You know what? I don't really
It
want to get
wasn't
into
Eve.
Well,
But we can move on.
I also don't want to get into like the implications of what both perfect foreknowledge and omnipotence means in terms of what you can be blamed for.
Yeah.
So,
This is also, again, on a theological sidetrack note, that's why Judaism doesn't hold to the concept of original sin.
Yeah, no, it's not even a universal Christian doctrine, by the way.
Whoop, whoop.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's like, if you watch like a American evangelical fundamentalists, especially who are like conservative enough theologically to be young Earth creationists, you do not get a good sense of the broad swath of Christian theology. It's in fact far more diverse than you
real
think.
Christians, TM.
That's true, they're not real Christians. Although, I've noticed that the same people who will anathematize the vast majority of Christians will then turn around and brag about how Christianity is the biggest religion in the world, and it's like, not according to you.
Right.
According to you, virtually all of them don't count. Christianity is a tiny religion according to you.
So maybe they really are persecuted.
Look, if you're a Christian, you want to be persecuted, there's plenty of places you can go. Just the United States isn't one.
America is not one of them.
Go hang out in Iran or in Egypt or in Iraq, or parts of Syria. You can be persecuted to your heart's content, I promise. But the United States is
there's a bingo card in the Discord. Yay, thanks Fearmonger.
Nice. All right, here we go.
Have creation, and then we've got death, sin, suffering, thorns, and bloodshed, all for millions of years. And at some point, God brought Homo sapiens here through Adam and Eve, and then we would have the fall that happened sometime after that. So it would really have no effect. This is why...
Or maybe the death was the death of humans, or maybe there was some spiritual meaning. Because remember, it's not like an Adam and Eve died the day that they ate from that fruit, despite the fact that text earlier says, in the day in which you eat from it, you will die. Maybe there's something more complicated going on there. I don't know.
That's also one of those things that people can't seem to agree on when they're talking about like, oh yeah, I mean it's literal days, but again in chapter 2, ki bayom, in or for or when in the day. There is literally the same word yom that's used in the chapter beforehand. And they're like, no, that's
not a literal day,
it's just talking about, like, just a period of time, like back in the day. It's like, nah, you need to pick a lane.
Okay, here's something weird. Every time I hear the word for day in Hebrew, it makes me think of the almost identical word in Arabic, but it sounds mispronounced. It always sounds like someone is just really, really bad at speaking Arabic. And I recognize that's because I know more Arabic than I do Hebrew, and I don't know either very well, but like still. Because the Arabic is yaum. And so it's, it always just feels like people are just really bad at Arabic. And then I think, no, that's not what's happening. They're just okay at Hebrew. It's not the same thing.
I will say, like, there's a meme that goes around every once in a while that's like, I'll kill you so hard you'll die to death.
Yes.
My favorite iteration of that is Atrocitus from the Green Lantern Corps types of stuff. But what's funny is that the Tanakh actually does say almost that exact same thing.
Yeah, and dying you shall die.
Yeah, dying you shall die. Mot
Mhm.
tamut. Like, yeah, dying. You will die. So maybe they started to die, but it just took a real long time. It took like 800 years to die. It's like,
I mean, if you think about it, everyone is dying, just usually pretty slowly.
true. That is true.
Oh. All right, here we go.
Young Earth
telomeres.
theology and believing in an ordinary 6 days in a young Earth is important because it deals with the maligning the character of God, and it deals with the authority of His Word. So the non-literal interpretation would really say that the fall had no effect because it would put death and sin and suffering as God's fault. But
That's because people who don't believe in it don't call it the fall.
Yeah. And also, you could talk about things like the effects on humanity, the subject of that, the second chapter of Genesis. I don't know if you know, but the second chapter of Genesis doesn't spend a whole lot of time talking about animals and plants. It spends most of its time talking about why it is that humans are in non-idyllic conditions. Yeah. I don't know.
the young earth paradigm has it completely the other way. So you can't have a situation where God creates all this amazing creation over 6 days, and the Bible says, well, God saw all that He had made and it was very good. But you can't have Adam and Eve sitting on millions of years worth of dead bones and suffering and bloodshed and cancer for.
Yeah, God would never advocate for any of those things anywhere
No.
in the same book.
Oh, no nonsense. Poopy pants.
That's one of the things that bugs me here is like, clearly this is not a God who's opposed to all instances of death, pain, or suffering.
Nope.
That's not a thing you can say. Now, maybe you can make arguments about, for His chosen people or for the people who are following His rules or whatever, He doesn't wish these things, better things and whatnot. But clearly, this is not a guy who's like, death, pain, and suffering, always unacceptable. Never okay. That's not the character you can get from God.
And I love how he's always like, how dare you malign the character of God? How dare you question? And I'm like, you've never met a Jew, have you?
Well, there's that. But also, that's not even questioning anything. It's just, have you read the text?
Have you read the text?
Okay.
The answer is, maybe.
And then you know that God is just not universally opposed to things like death, suffering, and violence.
Goodness
It's
gracious.
not. It might not be. You can make the argument that maybe it's not like the first thing He leaps to in all cases. Maybe, yeah. There's lots of stories about sending prophets to warn groups before the death, pain, and suffering.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you can say that the character of God as portrayed, in the Bible, that's not His first go-to, but it's definitely on the table.
Years before they were even here to bring the fall to earth. So two very, very different worldviews. We're going to be presenting the young earth worldview today.
Man, this really makes something in my brain itch when they're like, well, we know what we see in the natural world. We know the evidence that we have. But my book says something else, so we're just going to ignore it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Pete's sake, that is not scientific. That's not how rationality works. That's not how logical thinking works. Just goodness gracious.
It's basically the exact opposite of how science works, right?
Yeah.
Ideally, now granted, everyone has their own biases, right? There's no scientist who can honestly say that they don't have any preferred conclusions and that they have never sought to confirm rather than work as hard as possible to disconfirm an idea. Why we have multiple people check. That's why reproducibility, peer review, all important. But the ideal for science is that you take the data that you get, and rather than having a conclusion that you've come to beforehand about what the data must say and what interpretations you must come to, you simply approach the data and then see which explanations are most likely given the data that you have, completely ignoring anything about previous conclusions that you would prefer to be true or not. Right? Like, honestly, if it were up to me, I think young Earth creationism would be a nice thing for it to be true, because then that would give me very firm answers about things like afterlife things, and whether there's a God or not, and whether there's some kind of, purpose that I don't have to all entirely derive for myself, even though I do still have to bother to buy into the purpose that, God would give. It's still, it still happens, but still, that'd be great.
Yeah, I get it. It's scary to have unknown quantities and for things not to be answered and for people to say, I don't know. That is actually scary because the world and existence in general is chaotic and frightening and too many variables, and, you know, having a definite answer, like, that makes people feel good, and I get it. But honestly, at some point, you really have to come to terms with the fact that this is it. This is not a dress rehearsal. And if you're going to sit here and favor the comfortable answers over the process of discovering what's actually happening or happened, then you're oh, honey, you got a big storm coming.
Yeah, you're gonna be wrong.
Yeah. And I love that these bullet points they're probably supposed to be raindrops, but I'm just gonna say that they're the tears that I shed having to listen to this nonsense.
Dan, excuse me. Dan Biddle is one of the worst. I know I said it before we started, but I'll say it here for everyone else. Dan Biddle is the guy who thinks that the mainstream explanation for the fossil record of dinosaurs is that every single dinosaur fossil is the fossil of a dinosaur who was killed directly by the asteroid impact at the end of the Cretaceous.
I'm going to fall back on that meme that dinosaurs aren't real. Read your Bible.
Goodness.
I'm going to go through quickly the top 10 evidences of Scripture, because it's one thing to say that there's some grand, intelligent designer out there. Our ministry likes to attach the identity of who that designer is with the authority of Scripture, because we believe it's the God of the Bible who's the creator. So let's go through some of these real...
You don't think they think the God of the Bible is the creator?
In a consistent way?
Okay,
no.
Yeah. That might, yeah, okay.
But again, that's my caveat, and that's just me being kind of petty. So, because I'm like, I pointed this out before. If you really thought it was the same character all the way through, then this character of God is extremely wishy-washy, changes their mind all the time, and gives conflicting instructions to various groups of people at different times. So,
yeah, I always thought it was odd that in one point, God's like, hey, no graven images of anything. And then later on, he's like, you should totally make a statue of a snake.
It was only for this one instance, you know, and then people got a little too far with it. So he's like, nah, just throw it out.
But then later he was like, you should make statues of bulls.
And put them in front of my house.
Right. So,
yeah.
You know, so I was like...
No, it's fine in that sense.
Okay. Apparently bulls don't exist in heaven or on earth. That's what I'm getting from that.
Maybe not their bodies, but their heads do.
Eric Hamian for $20 says, 1, birds aren't real. It's true. 2, birds are dinosaurs. Therefore, dinosaurs aren't real. You know what? That's airtight.
Logic is undeniable.
Yeah, I don't have anything that I can come back with. Yeah, no, that checks out. All right, well, now I have to go rethink my entire existence being a dinosaur.
Yeah, you're not real.
Yeah, apparently not. And then Dapper disappeared in a puff of logic.
Quickly, the first...
Sorry?
I said pont.
that we'll cover is Earth is obviously designed for life. We'll start with a scripture here, Isaiah 45. God says, "For thus says the Lord, who created the heavens, who is God, who formed the earth and made it, who has established it, who did not create it in vain, who formed it to be inhabited. I am the Lord, and there is no other." So God says...
I both love and hate how much of these talks is just question begging. Because you start with, the Earth is really young compared to how old science says it is, and this is the book that says that that's the case. And if you look here, this book says that that's the case, therefore it must be. That's
just round and round and round and round she goes.
Yeah, that's not how that works. You don't... Now, okay, fair enough, Isaiah isn't Genesis. So technically, it's not the exact same book, but, like, you're basing the entire point on this collection of writings that have been handed down to you by more or less co-religionists. And then saying that because this bundle of writings, if interpreted the way I would like to interpret it, indicates X, therefore X, why? Well, because read the book. No, if you want to say that the book is right in its claim of X, you have to go then find evidence of X that isn't just the book said so.
That's Again, it's what's your evidence? Well, the book said so. No. No. That's the claim, not the evidence.
Mm-hmm.
People tend to struggle with this. Like, no.
I mean,
Also,
it's
I
just
love what Savage Cobra says. You're a figment of your own imagination. So, like, you guys aren't actually watching a Dapper Dinosaur stream. You just think you are.
I'm not even doing a Dapper Dinosaur stream. I just think I'm just
That's
bringing
right.
it of that.
That's right.
Yeah. So there was something I was going to say about the Bible. Now I forgot what it is. Maybe I'll remember it later. Oh, right now I know. This is the same as, like, if you're accused of a crime and then you go into court and you just say, I didn't do it. Well, okay, great. Of course you're going to say that. So what? Right? It's
said it.
It's the reason that not guilty pleas don't just get you off the hook for any crime you're accused of. Right? It's the reason we still have the trial. Yeah.
He
In
created
fact,
this.
pleading not guilty is a guaranteed way to go to trial.
Yeah. I mean, there are circumstances in which you can, like, your counsel can convince, like, the district attorney or something that, like, they should drop the charges because they don't have the evidence. But generally speaking, yeah, the reason that trials occur at all is because people were like, nah, I didn't though.
Yeah, it's like the state or the county or whatever said, you did this thing, and they're like, no, I didn't. It's like, all right, now we have to go have a royal rumble about it.
April Van Ryn says Dapper is the very first Boltzmann brain. You know, by their very nature, if
God.
Boltzmann brains are possible, I'm almost certainly not the first one.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah.
Does somebody else watch Access Astronomy other than me? Because they did a video on that very thing this week.
Oh, did they?
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, the Boltzmann brain is one of those trippy ideas where it's like, I feel like there's a problem with this idea, but I don't know where the problem is. Still seems like it's not right, though.
This earth to be inhabited. And it's really simple. If you just look at the rotational patterns of all the earths, you guys, you can't change a single thing on this video and still have a habitable earth.
That video does not portray a habitable earth. That is a not to scale solar system in which I doubt even the orbits are the right, like, speed relative to each other. But whatever,
Aren't those circles, not ellipses?
Yeah, this is all just a bunch of nonsense. But look, there are...
And the Earth's not even tilted?
No, the Earth is not tilted. It's not spinning. There's no moon that I can see. So, first, bad job on your animation overall. Second, there are actually tolerances where the Earth could shift. In fact, I don't know if you guys know this, but Milankovitch cycles involve long-scale shifts to the orbital parameters of Earth as a result of things like interactions with Jupiter and Saturn that occur gravitationally. And while you might argue that, say, the height of glacial maxima are not the best time to be around, it's clearly not, an all-or-nothing thing for Earth to, say, change its eccentricity or, change its argument of perihelion or things like this, because, those are things that do happen. So,
and
yeah.
Just because it would be inconvenient or not conducive to human life doesn't mean that life, period, can't exist.
So true. So yeah, there is a range outside of which Earth could fall where it would no longer be habitable. But it's not zero range, right? Like, Earth is not in the one perfect spot that allows humans to exist or life to exist in. That's not what's going on here.
If you change the speeds of the orbits of any planet, the distances between any planet, or heat up the...
You think he knows that you can't change the speed of the orbits without changing the distance of the orbits? Do you think he knows that? Those are intrinsically related to each other?
I doubt that he understands how, like, Newtonian gravity, like, models work, much less relativity, wherein gravity's doing the heavy lifting. So.
You know what? I think Dan Biddle should play a little bit of Kerbal Space Program so he could get a better understanding of the basics of Newtonian orbital mechanics.
Yeah, everybody play Kerbal.
Yes, Kerbal Space Program. I can't, unfortunately, currently recommend the sequel. I do own it. I did buy it. It was basically my gaming budget for, like, I guess Q1 2020 was just Kerbal Space Program 2. Unfortunately, it's extremely buggy, and it's mostly unplayable. So, like, get the first game. It's really cheap. But, Yeah, it's a great
And
way to learn.
I will say before you read the super chat that I would like to once again thank my mysterious benefactor for purchasing things for me off of my wish list, because I was gifted by a very, very, very generous individual a new graphics card. So I may now do things that I previously was not able to do before. So thank you very much.
Like play Kerbal Space Program?
Yeah! Or Midnight Suns, which is probably what I'm going to use it for.
Also, the Sealoof, who's been a member for 1 month and is at the amniote level, I can talk, I promise, says, let me give this a try. AIG are a cloth-wrapped bundle of gooey ducks with the Mothra. I actually bought one of those when I lived out in like the Seattle area, because it's the only place where they're affordable. And
Amazing.
I made like a stir fry with it, and it was a very strange experience. Like, it was fine, it was good. I mean, it just big clam. Like, if you like clams, you'll like gooey ducks. But like, yeah, it was weird taking home this gigantic penis-shaped hunk of clam meat.
You know, I really need to figure out how to become less derpy on these streams, because my brain absolutely read that super chat as Geodudes, like the Pokemon. And in my brain, I was like, what's the relation between a Geodude and a... What?
Yeah.
And then you read it, and I went, oh, whoops, haha, doo-doo-doo.
Yeah, it's one of the world's biggest clams. Although it has a normal-sized clamshell. That's the weird part about it. Yeah, like,
That really is weird.
The vast majority of it is like a foot combined with a siphon, and that's like the vast majority of the actual mass of the creature, and then at one little end, there's a little tiny clamshell that's just there. It's like a fairly normal-sized clamshell. Yeah, they live buried under the sediment, so they don't actually rely on their shells too much for, like, protection. They can't even
makes sense.
pull themselves into the shell.
Dang.
Yeah. Anyway, here we go.
Moon or heat up the sun or change anything in that formula that I just...
I hate that he thinks that you can just change one of these things without changing all of them. For instance, how do you heat up the sun? Well, if you want to heat it up at any given point, you have to add fuel to it, which is going to increase its mass, which is going to change the orbital parameters of the things orbiting it, which will then change their speeds and their distances. Like, it's not like these are all just things that you can just fiddle with any one knob, right? All of these combined together. They're all one part of a
Remember
whole.
the time that I said that I highly doubted that he understood relativity?
Mm-hmm.
Remember that?
Yeah. It's like you were right or something.
Good times.
And also, like, this is also sort of like the anthropic principle, right? It should not be surprising to humans that humans find themselves in a universe and in a place in the universe capable of supporting human observers.
Yeah.
If there were no such place, you would not be around to be surprised by it.
It's self-explanatory, really.
Yeah. So in the vastness of space, of the entire universe, at least one place is capable of having human intelligence level observers. And such a place harbors such things. This is not actually super surprising. Right? Like, the reason you're not observing from Jupiter is because you couldn't be. You'd be dead. For many reasons. So, like, yeah. Anyway, we're going to actually take a quick break.
DM Wing Unofficial says, put the sun in the microwave for 5 minutes.
That'll heat it up.
That'll heat it up.
All right, so we are going to take a quick break. I'm going to get myself some more caffeine, although it's starting to actually get warm around here, so I'm actually going to get some icy caffeine. And then we will be back. In the meantime, you are going to be treated to musical stylings of Beethoven No Relation during our intermission. And then we will be back. I bet that Vishanti also needs additional caffeine.
Yes.
All right, because you're mixing up clams and rock-type Pokemon.
Sounds worse when you put it like that.
All right, we'll be right back, everybody. All right, and we are back. I have myself a nice icy beverage because I actually looked at the thermostat. It's actually warmer inside than we have the heat set to, because even though this is Arizona, this time of year it gets colder. Like now, the inside of the house is actually warmer than it usually is. Welcome back, everybody. Before we get right back into it, I want to point out Shanti does have links in the description. You can get to her channel, where I'm sure at some point a second video will show up.
Yes.
Yes. But also, if you're continuing to feel generous towards Vishanti, her wish list is in there. Also, there are links for me in the description for my Patreon. You can join the channel. I have a merch store in the description, as well as my own Amazon. Feel free to do any of those things if you want to help support, and you can afford it, not if you can't. If you can't afford it and you want to help, or even if you can afford it and you still want to help, please do hit like, leave some comments, just make sure you're subscribed to the channel. All of that helps, because all of it tells YouTube, hey, people like this. Show it to more people. And then, more people see it. And then maybe I can add a second game to my gaming budget for Q1 2023. Anyway, we'll just jump back into the Dan Biddle, unless you have anything you want to add, Vishanti.
I'm good.
All right, here we go. Showed you life ceases on Earth, and there's all kinds of other evidences that we can go. We can talk about carbon, the electromagnetic poles, the ratio of electrons to proton mass. There's all kinds of scientific details, but I like to start first with the big picture. If you just look at the planetary system and the orbits and the distances and the heats and the gravity and the temperatures, God really did intentionally, purposefully design a finely designed, finely tuned universe for us to live in.
Okay, so there's some problems here. One is, it's actually not obvious that these values could take on different, these constants could actually take on different values. So we don't actually know whether or not, say, the ratio of electron to proton mass could be different. We're not sure. Further, we're not sure that this set of physical laws in this universe is the only one that exists, even if they could take on different values. So we're going into a realm where it's like, we can't really even assess whether or not this argument is a possible argument to make. But second, let's say that Earth is fairly fine-tuned for life. The life that's going to develop there is going to adapt to the conditions on Earth, and then find itself supremely adapted to conditions on Earth, and then now it's, you're wondering why you're so well adapted? Well, as I'm sure most people have heard, you're adapted for the same reason that my drink here currently just happens to have the shape exactly of the glass it's in. What are the chances? I mean, can you believe that this liquid was poured into this cup and then just happened to take the exact same size and shape as the internal area of volume of this cup up to a certain level? Well, yeah, because it fills in the container it's in. Doesn't matter what the shape is. It's gonna fill in there as long as it's sufficient to hold water at all. The water's going to take on the shape of the inside of the container. The same is true for life. As long as a location is sufficient for life at all, the life that develops there will become highly adapted to those specific conditions. So if conditions on Earth were different, but still allowed life, you just get different life, right? And you can even see that on Earth. There are mostly like worms and crabs and whatnot, but that live around like hotter than boiling water around hydrothermal vents deep in the ocean with no light. Vishanti, how well do you think either of us would do in that kind of condition?
Probably very poorly.
Yeah, I'll bet our survival time would be measured in seconds.
Yep.
Yeah. Does that
like,
mean...
I can go to Mars, but I'm not going to last long.
Right. But does that mean that we're finely tuned, the surface of the Earth was finely tuned for you, and that the oceanic vents were finely tuned for the life that's there? No. We adapted to life on the surface on land. Other things adapted to life over by hydrothermal vents. It's the life that's adapting. So, yeah. We'll keep going.
Let's talk next about amazing flying things. David Reeves is...
Oh, okay, sure. We'll talk about birds, bats, or something, I guess.
Okay.
Go from the fine-tuning argument to birds exist, dude. Oh.
Going to cover the Arctic terns that are in.
I said, no, they don't. Birds aren't real.
Yeah, no, that's true. Birds aren't real. But bats are. And they can fly. And so are insects. Many insects can fly.
In your notes, so I'm going to go past that and talk about military drones real quick.
Oh, okay. So we're not going to talk about birds. Got it.
Because they're not real.
Well, sure. But he probably doesn't know that.
So we're going to compare military drones to dragonflies. It takes the military about $195,000 to design this little tiny Black Hornet nano drone. It can fly about 13 miles per hour for about 25 minutes. Has about a 1 mile range. It weighs 18 grams. It has 2 camera lenses and only about a 640 by 640 by 480 resolution, which is about 1 megapixel. That's
I have a question. Are drones alive?
Hold on, let me look it up. Give me a second. We'll check. We'll check with Jeeves. I'm gonna ask Jeeves.
Okay.
Are drones alive? Yes, because drone bees, the male honeybee. So
But Black Hornet nano drones, are those alive?
Okay, hold on. Are Black Hornet nano drones alive? No, they are not.
Weird. So we have something that's not alive, not biological, verifiably created by humans, and we're going to compare that to things that evolved. Great.
Yes. Best analogy.
Great. Okay. Gotcha.
No, I foresee no problems.
Nah. It's fine.
That's the best that man is capable of doing today with these little nano drones. Let's look at how God does this with a dragonfly.
Excuse me. That's again begging the question. You're assuming that this was not the result of evolution in order to show that it's not the result of evolution. You'll get to start with, let's look how the designer designed the thing that I'm trying to argue was designed in the first place. That's not how this works. And if you
come up with evidence that God created, you then have to demonstrate that it's your specific God, to the exclusion of all the others.
I mean, to get to the point where, like, you're arguing for his specific religion, yeah. Although, I mean, I could see why you might want to argue for a generic form of creationism, and then use other arguments to get from that to your specific religion, right? Like you could say, oh, well, now that we got you to theism, let me show you why my brand of theism is the right theism. I could see that as a reasonable tack. Average Cobra for $2 says, can a dragonfly transmit data over radio? Not to my knowledge. I guess I can't say for certain because, I mean, I don't know everything about dragonflies. But to my knowledge, no. Oh, Ugly German Truth says, next time try ChatGPT. Actually, I might be able to try Chat. Oh.
Amazing.
Do I remember my login for ChatGPT? Let's see what ChatGPT has to say about drones. Introducing ChatGPT, OpenAI. Okay, yeah.
Excellent. This isn't going to be cursed at all.
Try ChatGPT. Here's the button. Okay. My session expired. Yeah, I'll log in. I don't know what email address I used.
I agree with Robert Adsit. Clearly the military should be using dragonflies.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Okay, we're just going to continue on with have it save a new chat. Are drones, or we'll say military drones, are military drones alive? No, military drones are not alive. Military drones are unmanned aircraft that are controlled remotely by a human operator. While they are designed to perform specific tasks and can carry out a variety of missions, they are not alive in the sense that they do not have consciousness, free will, or the ability to make decisions on their own. They are machines that operate under the direction of a human operator and are programmed to perform specific functions based on predetermined algorithms and instructions. Okay, are dragonflies alive? Yes, dragonflies are alive. Dragonflies are a type of insect that belong to the order Odonata, which includes both dragonflies and damselflies. Actually, pretty good so far. They're multicellular organisms that exhibit many of the characteristics associated with life, such as the ability to grow, reproduce, and respond to stimuli. Dragonflies have a complex nervous system that enables them to fly, hunt, and navigate their environment. They also play an important ecological role as predators, controlling populations of smaller insects. Actually, you know what, ChatGPT? You did a good job. Good job. All right, here we go.
So this dragonfly costs nothing to develop. Only a loving designer creator can do it.
Again, begging the question, but sure.
And there's some...
Yeah.
Look, if I point out every single time he's begging the question, we will never get through this because he's going to do it
Okay, that's fair.
constantly.
controversy about this, but when you really start drilling down, people actually don't know how long it can fly, but the estimates range between 55 hours and 127 hours of nonstop flight time. For a dragonfly that weighs 0.3 of a gram.
I'm just going to point out the less it weighs, the easier it is for it to stay aloft. So, like,
right?
It's a weird thing, like, look how little this flying thing weighs. Like, yeah, that's one of the points of being a flying thing, is you reduce your weight to the maximum amount possible.
I still stand by my statement that he doesn't understand Newtonian, like, motion physics or gravity mechanics, and he definitely doesn't understand relativity, either special or general. So, of course, he's like, wow, look at this tiny thing. How small thing go fly?
Yeah, he seems to have, like, the same level of understanding of how this works as, like, a flat earther. Like, how can gravity hold down the ocean? It weighs the whole ocean, but it can't hold down a little bird? Like, oh.
Like, oceans don't have wings, but okay.
Yeah. Like, my goodness, dude.
Range of about 1,000 miles. They've actually tracked and recorded these things to fly entirely across the Indian Ocean. It has a built-in brain, and it perpetually...
Yeah, he did say 0.3 of a gram, which is a weird way to say it. But, I mean, look, this is a guy who uses evidences, so I'm not expecting him to be, like, super up on the normal way to talk about, like, scientific measurements. So...
recharges by eating flies. So when you compare that to the nanodrone, we can see how far apart mankind is from an all-powerful, almighty designer.
So, here's a fun thing. The fact that humans can't currently make a thing doesn't make the thing have to be supernatural. I know. Weird, right?
Mind-blowing.
Yeah. So, like, humans can't currently make, say, granite, because humans generally don't have thousands of years to wait around to get granite to form out of lava. They can make lava, basically, by melting things. And they can make rhyolite, which is the fast-cooling version of the same, what you get from the same types of lava that make granite. But yeah, that fact doesn't mean that granites don't cool out of lava intrusions, right? So there you go. And before humans could make rhyolite, because there was a time when humans couldn't get things that hot, that didn't make rhyolite supernatural either. The same thing is true for robots and insects. The fact that humans cannot currently exactly reproduce an insect as a robot doesn't make insects supernatural creations. That does not follow.
And dragonflies have a built-in brain. What about jellyfish?
They do not have a built-in brain.
What about octopus?
They have a built-in brain, yes.
Spread out, though.
It is spread out and very weird. And they also have brain-like abilities in some of the other parts of their body. But also, Cajun Crustacean has just joined the channel at the amniote level, so everybody, send in your tetrapod emojis to welcome Cajun Crustacean.
Pelagic tunicates.
Send pelagic tunicates. You don't want to scare them away.
Yep.
Now let's go even one step further. So this is a little robotic, imaginary robotic dragonfly.
So now we're just going into imagination land.
Hey.
I hate this so much. Guys, look, it's like the guy who, like a little kid who's trying out, like, running a game of D&D, and they're the DM, and they're like, look how powerful my dragon is. Dude, you can put whatever numbers you want in there. That doesn't matter. It's not impressive. But my dragon is so impressive.
I also love how he thinks that nanotechnology is free.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
odd.
So when you compare it by stacking them up, man's drone versus God's dragonfly, it's got a 3,000 times longer flight time, 2 times faster, a range 170 times longer, 54 times lighter, 15,000 more eye lenses, and a built-in brain. It perpetually
Notice we went from cameras to lenses. That's an interesting thing.
Technically, Dragonfly sight is measured in lenses, as the chat pointed out, but big numbers equal
big number
equal supernatural. So
so if you have big number therefore God on your bingo checklist, you can definitely check that off.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think it's a little deceptive though to say that like, oh hey, if I count up the individual lenses on 2 compound eyes, then I get to compare that as being 15,000 times more whatever than the 2 camera lenses that are not compound, but that do have compound light sensors past the lens, I'll point out. So maybe we should, instead of counting individual lenses, maybe we should count individual light receptors. That number would be a more tame number, for one thing, and also closer to comparing apples to apples. Just saying. I don't know.
Charges, and here we go. It can reproduce itself.
Can you imagine how terrible it would be if man-made drones reproduce themselves? We'd just be inundated by a bunch of useless drones.
About this?
Yeah, basically, yeah. It's a literal horror story. Even if we could make drones that reproduced, we wouldn't want to. That would be a bad idea. Do you want gray goo?
I mean, if you're the... I was going to say, if you're the military, you do.
Well, maybe. But, like, this is how you get gray goo.
Using these little tiny eggs that would fit on the tip of a needle. So there is a huge contrast where we're saying, oh, we're smart, we can figure things out, we're humans, we know science. No, let's let God have science down. He knows exactly what he's doing. Mankind can't even come close to making a nano drone that's...
So here's the problem, right? Let's say God has science down. Cool. How do humans get it, though? Because God doesn't seem to be inclined to just hand it out. So, you know what's not in the Bible? A detailed description. A detailed description of dragonfly reproductive systems. It's just not in there. So, like, I don't know what good it is to say that God has science down. That doesn't help humans. Humans still have to figure it out. And, the unfortunate thing is, when humans figure it out, find out that, hey, there's a bunch of stuff that you don't actually need supernatural explanations for, including dragonflies.
I think the Nephilim are the ones who gave humans the ability to understand that, obviously.
Oh,
because God wasn't going to dole out that info, remember? But you got to have the Nephilim and the fallen angels to teach people how to make weapons, music, and do makeup.
Okay. Yeah. They're the ones who are teaching humans the secret of fire?
Yep.
But do they then get tied up to a rock or a mountain or whatever so that an eagle can peck out their liver? I'm just mixing up, like, Greek myths with Hebrew myths.
That's fine.
3 of a gram that could reproduce itself and fly for hundreds of miles. Just amazing, amazing design.
DM Win Unofficial for $5 says, if God has science down, maybe the unearthed creationists should ask them about it. Yeah. Because my goodness, do they not have it down?
Right.
So this, by the way, if your bingo card has something like, gee, that's neat, therefore God. I mean, that's all this is, right? Like, dragonflies are neat, therefore God did it. Which, not an argument.
So let's talk about the week of creation and contrast plants and pollinators. So if you come at Scripture naturally, you would say, well, day 3, God created plants that needed pollination. Then on day 5, he created the birds and bees, and the bees and butterflies to go out and do the pollination. So that makes sense because you only have 2 days of separation between the plants that need pollinating and the animals, the creatures that go about doing it. Bees are amazing creatures.
Just going to say, not everyone consented to all this pollination business.
Yeah, right. Isn't there someone you forgot to ask?
Yeah.
And also, how does he know they needed pollinators before the fall?
Yeah. That's a good question. In fact, actually, not all plants need animal pollinators. In fact, there's this thing called wind pollination, where the wind just blows the pollen around. I don't know if you've ever been to a place where like the ground gets carpeted in a yellow coating of pollen.
That's the place I used to live.
Yeah, I've lived in places like that too. That's not insects spreading that pollen. That's the wind.
Oop. Those yellow puddles that happen in springtime rain.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's not a one-to-one thing. But here's the thing. The evolution of a symbiotic relationship is actually not hard to understand. So you start off with, you have a plant that is doing wind pollination, right? So it just relies on the wind to pick up its pollen, spread it to the female parts of a different plant, or in some cases even parts of the same plant, because plants do self-crossing all the time. And then there you go, boom. You get new baby plants. Great. But hey, pollen is relatively easy to get, and it has calories in it. So it becomes a food source for, let's say, insects. Which also happens. In fact, there are insects that eat pollen that do not actually then go on and really do much pollination. But if that attaches to an insect, and then it goes to the next flower to go eat some pollen there, that pollen could very easily go and get onto the other flower. Now, if you then, instead of having the insect just rely on the pollen to eat, because that's your reproductive material, really, you should be using it to be reproducing instead of just tempting insects, that's where you start to get things like nectar, right? So you sacrifice the plant sacrifices a little bit of its own energy production to tempt the insect away from just the pollen and into eating some nectar, which then still has it have incidental pollen on it, which then means you can spend less time making up excess pollen you need to stop because you need to make up for attrition. Okay, great. Now you have a symbiotic relationship between insects and plants that need pollination, but it's actually not obligatory. And there are still many plants today that do use insect pollination, but do not need to and can rely on wind pollination. But there are also plants. Oh, sorry.
I was gonna say, where's Bree when we need her?
Right, Bree, get in here.
I'm science. But also, can you fast forward a few seconds, because for some reason this particular image of a honeycomb is triggering my trypophobia. I'm not sure why.
I'll look away and I'll let you know when it's gone.
Okay.
My son and I were beekeepers for a while and got to see a little bit about bees. Did you know that hexagonal design?
Hexagonal.
Can you rewind him saying that hexagonal?
Need pollinating, and the animals, the creatures that go about doing it. Bees are amazing creatures. My son and I were beekeepers for a while and got to see a little bit about bees. Did you know that hexagonal
hexagonal, amazing
design of the bees is the strongest structure that you could use for holding honey? Physics and science.
Kind of. It's also just what happens if you try to maximize volume, with walls. In fact, actually, bees try to make circles, but because of the tension in the wax and the way that they arrange one circle with, the 6 circles around it, it just pulls into a hexagonal shape. They're not really trying to make hexagons. It's just kind of what happens.
Scientists have looked at this just going, yeah, it's strong and it's maximum capacity. So those little cells that the bees are going through and putting in the nectar and the pollen and everything that later turns into honey, they can also design the honey.
It's gone, but it's a different honeycomb. I still don't think you should look.
Comb in a way that's perfect for ventilation, and in the winter all the bees are going to cuddle around the queen and flap their wings at a certain RPM to keep the queen at a perfect temperature.
Do wings rotate or revolve?
They don't. No, they do not. They go back and forth and up and down, and they tilt, but they don't make circles, really. Well, I mean, they kind of go in
RPM may
circles,
not be the best way to describe.
You could go with hertz, I suppose.
Yeah.
But yeah, they don't rotate in the sense
feels weird.
Of spinning in a circle. They don't do that.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
But here's the thing, right? So we know that this is instinctive behavior, and we know that because you can actually change the behavior based on things that you do genetically. So, for instance, if we go outside of insects, because it's a little hard to do lots of behavioral studies on insects, but we do have closely related, say, rodents, who make very different kinds of structures, like burrows or dams or whatever. And when you cross rodents from different groups that make different kinds of burrows, the resulting offspring make intermediate burrows. And you can do things like you can knock out genetic elements to change behaviors. We also know that behaviors that are genetic can therefore be affected by mutations. And we know that a difference in behavior can result in a difference in survivability. And a difference in survivability as a result of a mutation gives natural selection something to work on, which means all of this is completely in line with natural selection. So if he wants to say that this has to be a result of God telling bees what to do, then he has to show that this is not genetic or that natural selection doesn't work. Now, spoilers, this is a joint program with ICR. ICR has rejected natural selection as being a thing at all. So later on, we are going to actually get arguments against natural selection, which will make this work. But I just want you to keep in mind, unless you can rule out natural selection, this is not an argument for design. This is just pointing out that, hey, bees are good at surviving, which, yeah. Also, we just got 5 gifted memberships from Savage Cobra. They went to Interrobang, Peyton Dooley, Tom Boogan, Chesh, and Kristen Mills. So, and I see that everyone has been leaving, well,
Pelagic tunicates.
You shouldn't be leaving pelagic tunicates because those are gross and disgusting, and no one should be leaving those. You should be leaving tetrapod emoji. What it's for. All right, here we go.
So that she can last through the winter. But look what bees just do on their own. Just amazing design. And all that information is already programmed into the bee's brain by its designer. How to evolution.
This actually reminds me
programmed.
It actually reminds me of a story I heard where someone put it was an image of the Virgin Mary in a beehive. It was a beekeeper, right? The bees built combs except around like her face. And the guy was like, "Oh, look, they honored the Mother of God." Like, okay, but like there was a different surface between the face, which was painted, and the borders, which were just like metal leaf that had been like lacquered. So how do we know it's not just the bees prefer to paint or to build on the lacquered metal rather than the paint? How do we tell the difference here between that?
Bees are Catholic.
Okay, to be fair, it was not a Catholic image. This was in fact an Eastern Orthodox.
Oh.
Yeah, so maybe bees are actually Eastern Orthodox. That's the one true religion. Sorry, Catholics.
Look at that cute little bee. Cute little bee friend.
But yeah, it's just one of those like, how do you know? How do you know that this is miraculous? Did you rule out the non-miraculous options? And the answer, of course, is, well, no. No, you didn't. Let's see. What are the vestigial parts of a honeybee that are left over from evolution? Actually, would not be able to tell you what parts of a bee might be
brain
vestigial.
The size of a grass seed. A brain is vestigial?
I've never heard anyone say that bees have vestigial brains. I don't know what they're... Look, let's hit play and let's hear what his argument is, because currently I have no clue.
Just explain this. Well, do you know that every bee that you can go back through the fossil record that's tracked either in stone or in amber, bees always look like bees?
That's incorrect. We actually have an extensive fossil record for hymenopterans, which is the group that includes bees, wasps, and ants. We actually have transitional forms going between social but not eusocial, mostly predatory wasps, and primarily, nectar-eating and pollen-eating eusocial bees. We also have intermediate forms in the fact that we still currently have wasps that are eusocial, wasps that aren't. Bees are just a subgrouping of wasp, and so are ants. And we actually do, in fact, have transitional forms in these areas. Oh yeah, you know what? We'll put up the actually the transitional slide has a transitional wasp. So here it goes. So yeah, we actually do have a lot of transitions. The evolutionary history of Hymenoptera is actually one of the better attested things in the fossil record. And coming up right there, those are some fossil transitional wasps and wasps into ants. That's what that was just there on screen. Like, this is not some kind of crazy mystery. How could bees have evolved? Bees are just wasps with some different adaptations to a different lifestyle and a different diet. That's it. Bees are, they're actually not all that extraordinary in terms of Hymenopteran diversity. They're cool because they make things that are delicious, and they're basically the only domesticated insect. But none of that makes them particularly difficult for evolution to explain. And on the one hand, I hate trying to imply that there's nothing special about different organisms when I say, like, there's nothing about this that is particularly difficult for evolution to explain. So I feel like it makes it sound like I'm saying that this isn't a cool organism, which it is. But being cool and being hard for evolution to explain do not correlate to each other. Like, those two things do not line up. So when I say, like, there's nothing special about bees that makes it impossible for them to evolve, I am in no way saying that that means that they are not cool. And I just realized I have the transitional slideshow on loop. I was waiting for it to end. Wasn't going to happen if I keep it on loop.
Nope.
Okay, so here we go.
There's no evolving bee that evolutionists have been willing to put out.
Really? Okay, let's see. Oldest bee fossil. Let's see. Trigona prisca. Oldest bee fossil. Interesting. Let's see. About twice the age of the oldest previously known fossil bee. And it was most of bee evolution probably occurred about 50 million years ago, being Cretaceous. Then it is in this phyletic line of Meliponidae. There has been almost no morphological evolution since that evolution about 50 million years ago. So, I mean, there is that. Bees have been pretty, well in stasis for 50 million years. But let's see. A mid-Cretaceous Hymenopteron from Myanmar is the first fossil record of a primitive bee. Got that.
Neat.
Let's see. Yeah. So, 100-million-year-old wasp fossil. Also from Myanmar.
Proof that demons exist.
Yeah. Man, it's almost like there actually are fossils, and that you can actually just go look them up. Weird. Yeah. Of course, also, it's not very easy to, from a fossil, determine whether or not the animal involved is a eusocial pollinating insect. Right? Because all you have to go on is the gross morphology. And the thing is, the gross morphology between eusocial wasps and just social but not eusocial wasps, or solitary wasps, is actually not that different. So it's actually not easy in a fossil to go ahead and say, well, this is the first bee, because this was an obviously eusocial wasp that was primarily pollinating flowers. Those aren't all things that preserve very well. Anyway, here we go.
All of these complete structures that you find with bees are in the fossil record as far back as you want to go, because God engineered them from day one. The most amazing thing...
That's not true. We just looked it up. We just checked, right? We did the thing he said. Far back as you want to go. I went back 100 million years. There were no bees, but there were wasps. And then you go back about 50 million years, and suddenly you start seeing primitive bees. I don't know what to tell you.
However, about bees is that they can do this thing called the waggle dance, where a scout bee will go out and fly, learn where all the nectar is and all the cool plants that have pollen and everything. They'll fly back to the hive, and they'll dance around in a figure eight, and in the middle of some point in the figure eight, they'll waggle their little tails, and they're actually drawing a map for the rest of the bees.
It's not directly a map. It's more of a direction and range and quality of food. You're getting 3 points of data. How far, what direction, how good is it? That's not a map, more like a range finding, but it is very impressive. But again, unless he wants to say that there's no way for genetics to encode behavior, which he isn't, this doesn't help, because we know that genes can be influenced by natural selection, and so until they get to the section where they're going to try and disprove natural selection, all we can say is, well, that's cool. Doesn't help unless you can get rid of natural selection. Jessica, who's been a member
I agree with the chat. Bees that have tails?
I mean, wait, what?
You said they wiggle their tails.
Oh, yeah, he means abdomen. It's true. It's not a tail, it's an abdomen. But, Dan Biddle is so dumb that if I nitpick every single tiny mistake that he makes, I'll never finish. And also, it's one of those mistakes where, it's really dumb, but, it's not getting to the heart of the argument, which is that bees do this little dance. So, yeah, they don't have tails, but he means their abdomen. Also, Jessica, who's been a member for 5 months and is at the annual level, says, I know it's not a drinking stream, but while it's relevant, AIG are a holster of hexagonal hoo-hooty lilies. Thank you. Look, if your Hoodalily is hexagonal, you might want to see a doctor about that. Not the
Debris!
normal shape.
To fly out and go follow to find out where all the pollen is. They've actually confirmed this at UC Davis with studies. How in the world could God engineer a bee with all of that information right in its in its tiny, tiny little pin-sized head to go do this? There's no way that mankind could ever come close with.
You haven't shown us how God could do it either. You just asked the question and then didn't go into it. You said humans couldn't do it, which, okay, that doesn't help. But if you're going to suggest God in your scientific explanation, you're going to have to give a mechanism for how he did it. But you haven't. Yeah, Silu says it's fine. We'll nitpick everything he says. Okay, fair enough.
Okay.
Oh, and Jillian Wren got a bingo, apparently. Congratulations. That's awesome.
Woo!
Very nice. So
And
congratulations
yes, I
on the
did
bingo.
summon Bree. Sorry,
did.
Bree. Taking damage.
Yeah, so Hivesai Bree says they have stingers, which are weaponized genitalia, no tails. This is accurate. Those are ovipositors. Stingers on bees are, well, the stingers on hymenopterans broadly are ovipositors, which in non-stingery insects are used to deposit eggs on things.
Something like that. How we doing on? Okay, I got 0.
That's also why bee drones, as we read earlier, don't have stingers. Because being male, they didn't have ovipositors to develop into stingers. Fun thing there. Oh, dinosaur design. My goodness, we're going to get into dinosaur design shortly before it's time to actually just leave. Okay, Dan. Come on, hit me with dinosaurs. I like that we summoned Bree, and by the time she gets here, we're on to dinosaurs anyway.
Yeah.
Sorry, Bree.
0 time or 2 minutes? Okay, 0 time. Let's cover up with dinosaurs here. Dinosaurs are amazing. You know that God says
Dinosaurs are amazing. I'll agree with Dan on
They
that.
are.
in Job chapter 40 that he created this creature called Behemoth, which he called the chief of all of his works, or the first in ranks of all of his created creature. He gives 14 different characteristics about Behemoth.
Okay, made along with man.
You
don't get to say
I
yes.
cannot.
Yeah, well, let's just go through real quick. And then we'll probably get out of here and, Okay, made along with man. That's, again, assuming that you're right from the outset. You don't get to do that. Okay, eats grass like an ox. Now, there may have been some sauropods in parts of Asia at the end of the Cretaceous that ate some grass, but by and large, no. Most sauropods were browsers or eating softer things like ferns. So, strengthen its hips, stomachs, muscles. I don't even know what that means. Like,
I'm going to do number 4. Notice how he highlighted tail like a cedar when the text says it moves its tail like a cedar. The key part of that is motion. So he marked big dinosaur, yes, which I think is exactly the opposite. Hippos and elephants can, in fact, wiggle their tails like cedars.
Yeah.
It doesn't say his tail is a cedar. It means they move it. It wobbles. It jiggles and flaps around. Like, goodness gracious.
And also, Hugh Richards has joined the channel at the tetrapod level. Welcome to the channel membership, Hugh. Please, like I've said before, do connect this YouTube account to your Discord. You have to go to Discord and actually add it to connected accounts. And then that should automatically bring you into the Discord channel, or the Discord, where we do things like, I'm frequently there. We have all sorts of crazy discussions. And also, after Tuesday shows, if you're interested, we usually watch Power Rangers, usually 3 to 4 episodes. There you go. We just started Mighty Morphin Alien Rangers. We only watched the first episode, in which there are no Mighty Morphin Alien Rangers. It's a little disappointing, but whatever, Okay. Sinews of his thighs are tightly knit. I mean, sure, whatever. Let's see. Bones are like beams of bronze. I mean,
So they're strong, big bones.
Yeah,
thick,
that's
dummy, thick bones.
That's actually going to be a yes for all 3. I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry about that. Let's see. Chief/first in the rank of all God's creation. Well, guess what? The only reason you're putting no under elephants and hippos is because you think Job is aware of sauropods. But what if he's not? Uh-oh.
Both hippos and elephants are quite substantial in terms of size.
Yup. Let's see. Mountains yield food for him, and the beasts of the field play there. That's actually a no for everybody. None of these things can topple down mountains. Just put it out there. Lies under lotus trees in the reeds marsh. Actually, this is no, yes, mostly no. Sauropods were not marshy, water-dwelling creatures. They were very terrestrial. In fact, if you submerged a sauropod, because they're so big, it is very likely that the pressure put on their torso would actually prevent them from inhaling. Not true for the other two here. Now we have a couple super chats. Vandalia 1998 for $4.99 says, plus, even if it was like a cedar, Middle East cedars are different from North American ones. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the North American cedar is the one that kind of resembles, in the vaguest sense possible, a sauropod tail. Middle Eastern cedars are much more like the kind of stringy bit with the bushy bit at the end that you see on like bowtails or else. A hype side for $5 says, Dapper Dinosaur, where is the sinew of his stones? None of these animals have external testicles. That's true, yeah, none of them do. So if we take the strength to actually be a reference to virility, and it's in the hips and the muscles, like it's tied up in there, you could see that as like an argument that they're talking about the fact that it has internal testicles. I actually think that section is ambiguous to the point where like I'm not actually sure really what it's definitely trying to get at. I do think there's a fair chance that it could be talking about the virility of the animals in question, but like I'm not sure. Savage Cobra
The river
says,
may rage. Sorry, go ahead. Super chat.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, Savage Cobra for $5 says the blue whale is disappointed in not being chief/first. Yeah, which actually, by the way, puts us less than $1 from double feeders.
Sweet.
So let's see.
The river may rage it. He is not disturbed. That's a yes on all three in terms of at least being in a river and you not getting completely swept away by it.
Yeah, I don't see why that's a no for these two. I mean, elephants are excellent swimmers. Interestingly enough, hippos actually can't. Hippos. No, actually, they can't swim.
They don't. Well, I mean, they don't swim because they're all like muscles, so they don't float. They just kind of glide along the bottom with their toes.
But that's the other thing. They're pretty undisturbed by watery events.
Mm-hmm.
He is confident, though, that Jordan gushes into his mouth. I mean, this is an exaggeration for everybody, right? Sauropods actually do not have exceptionally large mouths compared to, say, hippos. And like, yeah, I don't. This is a maybe for everybody. DM Wing Unofficial for $2 says feeders. There you go. You gotta do double feeders next time.
I shall.
And Mark Smith also for $2 says feeders. Thank you very much.
Why not? Okay. So unapproachable by anyone but its maker. I'm a put yes on hippos because those are death tanks.
Yeah, and also there's not actually a whole lot of evidence that sauropods were death tanks, right? We don't have a lot of evidence of like sauropod attacks in the fossil record. Now, maybe that's just taphonomic bias, right? But like we don't have a lot of evidence of sauropods.
And, like you literally can approach elephants. Like, as long as you don't see them secreting the pheromones when they're in, like, mating season, you can approach elephants.
No, I generally don't recommend it.
I mean, I would recommend approaching an elephant before a hippo, but...
Right. Elephants absolutely can one-shot you. So, you know. But they won't always. But it's also not true that hippos will always one-shot you. There are hippos who can be trained to be reasonably okay around handlers.
You mean that one guy that raised a baby hippo, like its whole life, and it still murked him?
Well, yeah, there is that too. Then again, I know of a story of a guy who raised a camel for its whole life, and it murked him too because he failed to bring it its accustomed Coca-Cola bottle one day.
That's right.
Yeah, so, you know.
Listen, that dude rolled up to a camel and with his whole chest said, "Is Pepsi okay?" And the camel answered him.
By biting through his skull.
Correct. Camel's like, no.
David B22585, who's been a member for 7 months, says, all this biddle prattle of the bees that wiggle, waggle, and behemoth checklists, that'll never get I'm nothing in the science/biddle.
Never get him nothing.
Oh, sorry, that'll never get him nothing in the science/biddle battle. Yeah. No. So let's go through, right? I believe that we can probably say yes to everything on the hippo checklist. We definitely can't on the sauropod checklist. And it's a maybe for the elephant checklist. But I also want to add, remember The Land Before Time?
But
Movie. Yeah. What did they call the sauropods in that movie?
not Littlefoot.
Well, no, that was just the name of one of them. But what do they call that whole group, right? Like, they had the 3 horns, they had the spiked tails, and what were the sauropods called? Remember?
Actually, no, not off the top of my head.
They called them long
necks.
Yep.
That's right. Thank you, David B.
It's literally
22585.
the first thing you think of when you see a sauropod is like, gee, that's a really long neck. You know what Job never talks about when it comes to Behemoth? The one important thing about sauropods, right? The one thing. One of the reasons why I'm like, the only reason anyone ever says that Behemoth is a sauropod is because they want to find non-avian dinosaurs in the Bible. Because they, from other interpretations that they have, think that dinosaurs and non-avian dinosaurs and humans should have coexisted. So they read into Job a description of a sauropod that just isn't there. It just isn't. Yeah. And also Origami Swami points out, there's no nose that pierceth snares in here, which is, also interesting.
Yeah, big one.
Yeah, so we're leaving things out.
Also, Bree mentioned that earlier today there was a stream that they did about the cocaine hippos of Colombia, which, yes, you absolutely should look into, because that is a thing.
Yes, the cocaine hippos are a real thing, and it's so it's tricky, right? So, like, this is from Pablo Escobar's mansion, I guess, compound. I don't know what noun to use, but so when he was finally arrested, and people swept in and they got rid of all of his stuff, he had exotic animals. One of the exotic animals that he had was some hippos. But no one wants to deal with giant aqua murder cows. No one. So they just kind of let them be, and they escaped into the wild, and now there's a breeding population of hippos, and no one really knows what to do, but also one of the problems is some of the locals are kind of fans of them, because, they can be kind of charismatic from a distance.
Yes.
So, like, there's political opposition to culling the hippos, but on the other hand, those are not native animals, and they're like, kind of polluting rivers and whatnot, because I don't know if you know, hippos poop a lot, and the poop isn't super great for the rivers where they didn't evolve, and where the animals and plants and whatnot didn't evolve to deal with hippos in the river. So, like, yeah. And also, the cocaine hippos are not related to the cocaine bears, because the cocaine bears are cocaine bears because they took cocaine. The hippos did not. Yes. They were just paid for with cocaine.
Cocaine, yeah. And I love that we're getting the Asylum Studios answer to Cocaine Bear, because they're going to make Meth Gator. Because of course they are.
You know what? Every once in a while, I like an Asylum movie, because I'm just like, fair enough, do it. Make Meth Gator. I want to watch Meth Gator.
You know what? I will watch Meth Gator, because I appreciate the Asylum does not try to be something it's not. They're no, we know exactly what we are.
We're making mockbusters here, and if you don't want that, then you can go somewhere else. But if you do, come on over. And you know what? The answer is sometimes I do. I watched...
you need to put some respect on the name of the Asylum, because they created Sharknado.
They did create Sharknado. Also, I enjoyed Atlantic Rim for what it was, which was a ridiculous just rip-off of Pacific Rim that made no sense. And it was hilarious. I loved Atlantic.
Incredible.
Had so much fun.
What a time to be alive.
Seriously. Well, now that we've gone off into the Asylum mockbusters and Meth Gators, we're going to start wrapping this up, guys. So, like I said at the beginning of this, Vishanti's channel is linked in the description, as is her Amazon wishlist, as is my Amazon wishlist, and my merch store, and my Patreon, and so on and so forth. Shanti, do you have any places you're appearing or anything that you want to tell people about?
I don't think I have any appearances coming up this week that I can recall, but my brain is not functioning at optimal capacity, so I might be forgetting one.
Well, if you remind me of something that you need to do, I can add it to the description. So I don't know.
Okay.
Check back in a few days, and maybe there will be additional stuff in the description talking about whatever Vishanti
Or
is
just,
going to be.
me shit posting in the comments. You never know.
I mean, you're going to do that regardless of what I do.
Fact.
Vandalia 1998 from 199 says, Marijuana Sauropod, next blockbuster. Yes. I want to...
Good.
Marijuana Sauropod sounds great. Although
It needs to be Marijuana Mesosaur.
Okay, how about this?
Mosasaur, sorry.
Marijuana Mosasaur, huh? Because I was going to go with if Marijuana Sauropod just takes like a really big hit and then gets so, like, gets a little tired and dizzy and just falls into buildings. And then just takes a sleep there, and like the rescuers can't get in there because there's a giant marijuana sauropod on top of the building, trapping everyone inside. Inkboy for €5 says, "What to do with hippos? All I can hear is roughly a ton of pure muscle meat."
Yeah.
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 Okay, so on this channel, let's take a look at what we have coming up here by taking a look at my calendar, which the coffee mug is in front of, so I can't see it. Okay, so on the 14th, we're going to be doing the next Kent with Bent. It looks like going to be just me and Bent, I think. I don't think we have a guest planned. Then on the 16th, I will be doing some video. I believe it's the next video in a new series. I'm going to double check what it is. Yes, it's ICR Lies About Dinosaurs. So in this, a couple ICR...
Carnotaurus.
Correct, Carnot. That would be pretty great. Yeah, so in this one, it's not Jeffrey Tompkins. Who is it? It's Cleary and I don't remember who the other guy. He's like a paleo biochemist. They're both ICR PhDs. Doesn't really matter.
Oh my god, these are so great.
They're going to come in and lie about dinosaurs, and I'm going to correct the lies about dinosaurs. And then a week from today, chances are I'll be back for more Genesis Apologetics.
Jessica for the win. DMT Rex.
DMT
Yes. Yes.
Amazing. That really is good. DMT
Amazing.
Rex. PCP Pandas would also be a rather entertaining movie, I think. So chances are on the 18th we'll continue with this. Now, Vishanti and I are still working out exactly how we want to do stuff like the Kent Hovind slides, to go through those. So we aren't quite sure what we want to do, but we definitely do want to do that. So, yeah, DMT Rex is pretty amazing. All right, guys.
It's the sea lion.
DM Unofficial says, Young Earth Creationists lying about $2, and that was for $2. Yeah, I know. Can you believe it? And the reason I say they're lying about dinosaurs is because the only way to say these things that they say about dinosaurs is either to have not checked and made it up, in which case you know you made it up, and so you're lying, or to have checked and know not just that you're making it up, but that you're actually wrong, in which case you're still lying, right? If you make up dinosaur facts and then produce them like they're true, which is the best case scenario, that they don't know they're true, they just made them up, then you're still lying because you're presenting yourself as someone who knows things that you don't know. So, anyway, with that, guys, I think we're going to get out of here. Vishanti, thank you very much for coming on, even though you were very, very tired. Hopefully next time you will be less allergied up.
Tell the trees to get my consent.
Yeah, trees. There's someone you forgot to ask for consent, and it's basically everyone's nasal passages. All right, guys, with that...
These good movies keep coming. I'm going to copy these for later.
Well, the chat transcript will be saved, so you can always come back. It'll probably take a day or so, but it'll be in the chat transcript. Anyway, guys, hope you have a wonderful weekend. I hope to see all of you on Tuesday for Kent with Bent. I think it's 106. So, see ya on Tuesday. Thanks for watching, but before you go, I just want to say a special thank you to my channel members and my patrons, especially those pledging $20 or above. Bob Knob, Work in Progress, Ben Tovind, Tapioca Weasel, Cynically Skeptic, Denny5252, Elron Teller, Farava, Ian Chen, Landon Knoll, Mabdy Babbity, San, Sphincter of Doom, and the Venerable Bede. As you probably know, YouTube is a very volatile platform, and from month to month my income on the channel can swing wildly. The people you see on screen are directly supporting so that I don't have to worry too much about that, and the channel can keep going as it is, and perhaps even improving. If you'd like to join this team, there are links below to join the channel or in the description to join the Patreon. The Patreon starts as low as $1 a month, and the channel memberships start as low as $1.99 a month. On Patreon, you can even get a discount for pledging annually. If you do decide to pledge, you'll get access to an exclusive Discord server just for channel supporters, as well as early access to all of my pre-recorded videos, often up to 2 months in advance. Higher tiers will unlock even better perks. Now, if the annual or monthly pledge isn't right for you, but you still want to support the channel, there is a merch store down in the description, as well as an Amazon wishlist, just for me. And if financial support isn't something you can or want to do, then if you still want to help out the channel, please just like and share these videos and make sure you comment on them. It really helps the channel out. Thanks again for watching.